Thank you very much. Again, my name is Bill Johnson. I am the president and owner of Brilliant Harvest LLC. We are a state licensed solar contractor. And before we get started, I've been noticing all the comments and presentations that have been going on so far. And sometimes I kind of feel like I'm the family physician who is talking to the patient that's having their third or fourth surgery for lung cancer and not talking to them about stopping smoking. Solar, in all the discussions that we have, solar is really one of the few things that we can do to actively prevent global warming. And so with that, we're going to get started. So a couple things. I've got 10 minutes. We got to go very fast. So we're going to talk about solar stats. Then we're going to talk about the state of net metering, because there's a lot going on there. Talk a little bit about the Section 201 trade case, which you guys may not be familiar with. Talk about battery storage, and then what are the future policy options that we have going forward. So first off, what's going on with solar just in terms of total pricing? The trend really is incredible. Over the last 20 years, we've seen almost an 80% decrease in the installed cost of solar. This graph shows the orange curve here is for commercial, the blue is for residential. Lately, we've had kind of a stabilization in prices, and in fact, if you look at what's going to happen with the Section 201 case, we may actually see a slight increase in prices, but the long-term trend is that because this is a technology, as we go down that technology adoption curve, the cost gets better, the products get better, they get more durable, and they get easier to install. So let's get into the stats about solar in Florida. Today we've got 785 megawatts of solar installed. That puts us at 12th in the nation, which is, well, I'll leave it to you guys to make your conclusions about the Sunshine State. There are 86,000 homes that are powered by solar, and there's 8,260 jobs in that industry. And so, the question is, okay, well, 785 megawatts, that actually sounds like a lot, right? But it turns out if you actually look at total generating capacity in the state of Florida, we have close to 60 gigawatts. Okay, that's 60,000 megawatts of total generating capacity, nuclear, natural gas, coal, all the other kinds of sources. So really, we've got a long way to go. Talk a little bit about FPL, because that's very pertinent to us here in Sarasota. There's 59.8 megawatts of solar, customer-sited solar installed in FPL's territory, compared to 25 gigawatts, again, 25,000 megawatts of total generating capacity. 5,694 systems have been interconnected in FPL's territory across 28 counties and 4.5 million customers. The fewest interconnections, sadly, Suwannee County, number one. They got one interconnection. That's at least they've got something, right? Union County's got two. In terms of most interconnections, Brevard County's got 813, and coming just barely in second place is Sarasota County. So we can give ourselves a little bit of a round of applause. And actually, when you look at it from a per capita basis, Sarasota County's way in the lead in terms of solar adoption on a per capita basis. One for every 508 people in the county, one for every 220 households. So let's dive into that a little more. And by the way, I do have to say thank you to Lee Hayes for helping us get this data, because it's been fascinating to go through it. So please give Lee Hayes a big round of applause. In Sarasota County, we have 7.15 megawatts of solar installed, which is actually kind of amazing. When you look at that other number, there's a total of 60 megawatts across all of FPL's territory. 7's actually like, wow, that's actually a lot. But then you start to kind of dive into it and you say, okay, there's 797 systems. Manatee County has 279, so we're doing a lot better than Manatee County. The largest system is just barely over 100,000 watts. And there's 250 systems larger than 10,000 watts. There's only 7 systems in the whole county that are larger than 50,000 watts. So, if I was a teacher giving a report card, well, again, maybe we'll do that as an exercise. What would you guys grade us, in terms of our success so far? So let's So that's the statistics side of things. Let's talk a little bit about net metering. Does everybody understand what net metering is? Raise your hand if you know what net metering is. Okay, so there's a fair number of folks that don't understand what that concept really is. And the idea is that when you put a solar array on your rooftop, that the energy that's produced on that array doesn't necessarily coincide exactly with the amount of energy that's being consumed in the house, okay? So sometimes if it's really sunny and you're not running your air conditioning, you might send power back to the grid. And vice versa, if it's a cloudy day and you're running your air conditioning, you might be pulling power from the grid. So net metering is supposed to give you basically a one-for-one value for the kilowatt hours that you produce in excess of what you consume on site. And then you can use that energy the next day or that night or the next week or the next month. And typically you can roll those net metering values over kind of like a bank account almost up to 12 months. And at the end of 12 months, they zero it out and they'll pay you if you have any excess left over. So that's what net metering is. So let's talk about what's going on. Now, in FPL's territory, because they are governed by the Public Service Commission, net metering is totally safe. It's still in place. Everything's good to go. But there's a number of other territories in the state where there's some pretty serious things happening to net metering that we need to know about and we need to be advocating against. So before we get into that, though, I think it's important for folks to understand, like, okay, so net metering is this concept of a financial, value of solar. And there was a study done last year by the Brookings Institute, so highly respected group, and they said they looked at 26 different studies across the United States, and they found that far and away there is a net benefit, not just to folks who have solar, but also to folks who don't have solar, for those who put solar on their house, okay? So in other words, if I put solar on my house, it's gonna benefit you even if you don't have solar. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that, but it primarily comes down to the fact that because I'm putting solar on my house, the utility company doesn't have to install a new gas-fired power plant, potentially, if a whole bunch of people do that. And so what Brookings found is that far from a net cost, net metering is actually a net benefit for the utility company and for non-solar ratepayers. And that's an important thing to keep in mind, okay? So the facts support this idea that net metering is actually a valuable thing for the utility company. So what's going on? Peace River, which I'm not sure, some of you guys may be in Peace River territory, but they basically serve kind of eastern Manatee County across a band of Florida that's kind of south of Orlando and almost all the way over to the East Coast. At the end of June, beginning of July this year, put in a new program that basically kills the net metering, and it's going to end up with a 50% rate reduction for any energy that you send back to the grid. Okay, so that's a big drop. JEA, Jacksonville Electric, is even worse. They're talking about a 70% reduction in the amount that they will pay for solar energy that's sent back to the grid. So why is this taking place in a situation where we know that net metering is actually a value? We're trying to move quickly. Yeah, I know. So the Section 201 trade case, there's two American manufacturers, Suniva and SolarWorld, brought this case in May of this year, and basically they are claiming injury because of the import of solar panels from places like China, Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, you name it. They are seeking a 30% tariff on solar panels, and the United States International Trade Commission, which is the kind of governing body, has ruled that injury has been found, and we are awaiting a decision by the decider. He is actually the final arbiter of this case, and so we don't know what's going to happen yet, but we do think that there's going to be at least some sort of a tariff that is put in place. Okay, that's all the bad news. We're now going to talk about the really cool stuff, and this idea that solar plus storage, with the advent of these new battery technologies, that is what resiliency is all about, okay? If you actually talk to a number of our clients that have had solar battery systems put in during Irma and after Irma, they had no problems at all. Those systems just kept running, and the idea is that you've got your solar array up on the roof, you got your battery in the garage. Who cares about the grid? And so we're actually a Tesla Powerwall installer. And this is one of the new generations. There's a number of different manufacturers. There's a company called Sonnen, Pika Energy, that do these battery backup systems. But Tesla is a great product, and we're a big believer in it. You can power the biggest house you want with this system. You can do up to 50 kilowatts of battery capacity and 135 kilowatt hours of storage. It's amazing. These are just some graphs of kind of what the battery usage looks like. Green is excess solar production. The blue is what we call self-consumption. The red is consumption from the grid. This is the last slide. I'm going to skip over the policy stuff because you're going to get to that. But this is what the grid of the future looks like, okay? This idea of a distributed kind of internet of energy where each of us have batteries in our house, and we can network those batteries together in an intelligent way and actually create dispatchable power that we can sell to the utility company. So you get storage for resiliency, you get green energy across the grid, and you get a dispatchable source of energy, that's always been one of the big complaints that the utilities have, is that solar is not dispatchable. But in this future, and this is actually happening in California today, just so you know. So that's it. In order for us to change this, we've got to take leadership. That's really what it's all about. And so I'm going to give it over to Lee Hayes. Thanks.